Welcome everyone to the Simple Fund and Simple Invest 360 update webinar. The webinar should commence in approximately 5 minutes. Can I get a quick sound check? If I'm coming through clearly, could you please type into the Q&A window? Welcome everyone to the Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360 new features webinar for the month of June. My name is Anthony Fernandez. I am the product manager in charge of compliance in the Simple Fund 360 team. And today we're going to go through the features and improvements that were done as part of our tax update that came out a couple of weeks back. Hopefully I'm coming through clearly. Mark, I believe, can you please just to do a quick sound check once more? If you can hear me, could you please type it into the chat, into the Q&A window, please? All good. Cool. So, because I believe there are a couple of them who are having issues with sound. But yep, coming through clearly, all good. Okay, so we're going to go through the features from a couple of weeks back, which was also part of our tax update. Just a couple of housekeeping matters before we commence. Today's session will be recorded. So if you have any colleagues that aren't unable to sit in for this session, the recording should be available on our YouTube channel early next week. So the links should be sent around once it's sort of uploaded onto YouTube for those who have registered for this webinar. If you have any questions, please type it into the Q&A panel. I have a few colleagues logged into this webinar as well who will help out with questions as we go through. So please do ask or type in your questions as I go through with today's session. Okay, so I guess the main reason why we're here today, Tax Time 2022. Also, just in terms of how I'm going to go through the features for today's session or the session itself, I'll start off with those features and improvements that apply simply for Simple Fund 360. Then I'll go through the, I guess, features that apply to both Simple Invest and Simple Fund, followed by just the Simple Invest features towards the end. So this is starting off with Simple Fund for the SMSF tax return for 2022. So you are now able to prepare the SMSF annual return CGT schedule and losses schedule. In terms of compliance changes for 2022 tax time, the good news is there weren't much. The only changes were for the number of members. So the maximum number of members have increased from 4 to 6. Which means the number of member, let's say, pages on the tax return has increased from 8 to 12. That's essentially the only, I guess, notable change from the tax return. All these tax returns and schedules can be digitally signed as well as lodged as well. So if you've got any 2022 wind-up funds that you want to lodge prior to 1 July, you are now able to do so. Come 1 July, so come Friday, you'll be able to start lodging your year-end or 2022 returns for any fund, as well as 2023 wind-ups as well. So the lodgement has been switched on, the ATO is ready to receive, you are pretty much ready to go. Let me just quickly jump into Simple Fund. Hopefully you should be able to see my Simple Fund screen. Please let me know on the window if you can't see it. But yeah, essentially create entries to 30th June. If you're creating entries prior to 30th June, make sure you have a wind-up date, because if not, it won't prepare the 2022 tax return for you. So I've already created entries, so I'll just jump into the tax compliance screen. Nothing's really changed except for section F and G. So I've got 5 members in this particular fund. Nothing in terms of fields have really changed. Let me just quickly generate the 2022 tax return for you. So as I said, nothing's changed. If I quickly scroll through to the members section. The only difference is you'll now see the additional member pages. So I've got 5 members for this particular fund. So it'll have that member 5 or that 5th member page showing. Just a quick sort of tip as well for those of you who don't want to print, let's say, every single page of the tax return. So for those, let's say you've only got 2 members in the fund and you don't want to print the extra 10 member pages, there's a setting in the badger screen. So for example, you can notice it jumped from page 12 to page 20. It's a setting in the badgers, which I'll show you a bit later on, which allows you to just print the pages that have data on it. For those of you who actually print out the tax returns and don't want to waste paper. Outside of that, these tax returns can, as I said, be digitally signed as well, along with the schedules. For those of you that lodge using Xero, so you don't actually lodge using simple funds lodgement system, but prefer to export the data through to Xero and lodge through Xero, all that functionality has been updated for 2022 tax time as well. So down here, if you've connected using the API with Xero Connect, you can simply click on the Xero Connect and have the data sent through directly to your Xero tax entity, or you've still got the manual file upload as well. So this is the XML file you would download off Simple Fund 360 and manually upload into Xero Tax. So all that's been updated for tax time 2022. And as you can see, the validate button has been enabled so that you can now validate and lodge these returns essentially now come 1 July. As part of tax time, what we also do is we update all the what we call the XYZ financial statement documents. So that's like your trustee minutes, your notes to financial. Again, there were really no changes to them, but rest assured that they've been updated, therefore, to the 2022 financial year as well. We've updated the 2022 Fact Finder report. So that's a report that we add every year, which we, for those of you that haven't seen it previously, let me just quickly jump into it. So this is in your report screen, and you're looking for Fact Finder. So it's this one here. We've essentially updated it for a few of the budget changes that apply from this year. I can't zoom in. Okay, so the first one was to do with the downsizer. So with the downsizer contributions, the age limit was brought down from 65 to 60 for the 2023 financial year. So that's from 1 July 2022. So we've just essentially updated that information as part of the Fact Finder document. So it's essentially a document that you would have in front of you when you meet your client, just to give you a quick snapshot of where that particular client's fund is at with each of the members' contributions, pension statuses, and so forth. We've also updated the non-concessional caps. So that's changed from the 2022 financial year to be 110,000, which has increased from 100K. Of course, you need to consider the total super balance as well. Similarly, that affects your bring forward amounts as well to 330. So all that's been updated as part of the report, as well as the extension of the 50% minimum pension reduction. So that's, yep, that's here as well. Not highlighted. Okay, there we go. So all that's been updated as part of the 2022 Fact Finder report. And sort of the another sort of document that we've added is the ECPI election minutes. So this is to do with, consider a scenario where during the tax year, you had a mixture of both pension and accumulation members in the fund for a part of the year, and then all the members going to pension let's say for a second third of that year. And then for that final third, you have a new accumulation member come into the fund. So you've got a scenario where you've got a proportionate period, a segregated period, and a proportionate period to finish off as well. Now you have the option when applying for an actuary certificate to actually advise the actuary whether you want to use the deemed segregation method for that segregated period, or just simply use the proportionate method for the full year. Now, based on that election you make, what the tax office has said is you need to have a document signed by the trustee at the start of the financial year, indicating as to what that election is. Let me quickly jump into Simple Fund. So we've added just a sort of a quick minute, essentially. Now, this is all customizable. So it's a simple word template that you could customize. It essentially would say whether or not you chose to use the deemed segregation method or the proportionate method. Now, where this picks its information from is if you go into fund pension policies under member, and if you edit the actuary record for that financial year, you have this checkbox here. So this is what stipulates as to what gets printed on that minute. So in this particular instance, I've chosen to use the segregated method, and which is why it says use the deemed segregation. However, if you have this toggle switched off, it would say proportionate method for the whole year. So this is where the election is essentially controlled. And that's where you print it off from in the report screen. Okay, so that's pretty much the main stuff from Tax Time 2022. We've done some changes in Simple Fund 360, also for some of the budget changes that apply for the 2023 financial year predominantly. The first one is to do with the downsizer contribution, where the age limit was brought down from 65 to age 60. So what that means is we had to do a change in our transaction screen. So I've quickly jumped, actually, let's jump into members first. So I'm not sure if you can see that clearly, but I've got a member here, Sabrina, who's aged 60. And if I go into the transaction screen, just make sure that the date is set to the 2023 financial year. And we go into Sabrina, what you'll notice is the downsizer field has now been activated or would appear for that particular member who's 60 and over. So that's the change to incorporate the reduction in age limit for the downsizer contributions. The next one is to do with non-concessional contributions. So the bring forward age has been extended to 74 from 67. So, and that applies again from 1 July 2022. Let me close out of this, go into the next financial year. So in this particular instance, I've actually triggered the bring forward for Alan. As you can see, in the 2023 financial year, if I go into the contributions dashboard and switch over to the next financial year, you will notice that Alan, who's 73, will have that, let's say, the bring forward and all the compliance behind it now activated. So that's just to show the, again, the ability to contribute non-concessional contributions into the fund up to the age of 74. So those changes, again, have been enacted in the software for you already, ready to go for the 2023 financial year. And of course, the final one is the extension of the 50% minimum drawdown. And I guess the best document for this is in the report screen. You've got the projected pension calculation report, which has been updated for the 2023 financial year. So as at 1 July 22, the pension minimum has the COVID-19 50% extension or reduction extension applied to it. So, yep, so all those budgetary changes too have been implemented and enacted within the software. All right, let's move on to some of the improvements in Simple Fund 360. So the first, I guess majority of them are more relevant to SuperStream. The first one is to do with a create entries warning for missing electronic service address. So this is the first SuperStream sort of improvement. Let me jump into this fund. So what we do now is on create entries, we do a check for the ABN of that fund being registered with either BGL 360's ESA or Australia Post ESA. So where there is a employer contribution, and if the ABN has not been registered, nor has the ESA been input in the fund details screen, you would have this warning appear. It's just to give you a heads up prior to you going and lodging your tax return that, wait a second, you might need to check to make sure that this fund is registered for SuperStream. Now, we did have an issue prior to this release where it was triggering this warning where the fund ABN was registered with Australia Post. So that's been fixed up. So that, let's just say, erroneous warning should not be popping up anymore. So we do a check for both ABN being registered as well as the ESA being present in the fund details screen. We've also done an improvement for the rollover benefit statement form to hide the TFN and date of birth. So rollover. So that's this rollover benefit statement here. So now it would just say provided for both date of birth and TFN. And where you control all this, as I mentioned previously, is in the badges screen. So for badges, you go into settings, badge, select which badge you're working on. So in this case, it's default badge, and it is this TFN date of birth checkbox here. And in terms of, how I showed you at the beginning with the tax return, if you don't want all member pages or the blank member pages from printing, just make sure you have this checkbox unticked. If it's ticked, it will print all the blank member pages that are not being utilized. If it's unticked, it won't. So that's essentially where it's controlled. And you've got certainly more other settings. If you haven't come to this page before, please go have a look. It definitely makes your lives easier in terms of some of the customization we do provide with a lot of the reports that are generated. Okay, so we've also given you the ability to retrieve APRA fund details for any unique super identifiers or USIs that you input into Simple Fund 360. What I mean by that is, let me switch the fund. So if you go into the SuperStream dashboard, and we are looking in the fund view, so just switch the toggle up the right-hand side here to the fund view. And when you start to request a new rollover, so depending on the day, it's actually on both forms. It's on both the receiving and transferring funds. Let's start off with transferring fund. And it is this USI here. Let me just copy across a USI. So once you've, let's essentially say, input that USI, you've now got a link on the right-hand side of that field that says retrieve APRA fund details. And if you click on that, it will bring through as to who that APRA fund is. So it just gives you a bit more information as to who you're transferring out to, where you've just received the USI. So similarly, it works for your receiving fund as well, but in this case, it'll be the transferring fund details section that you enter that APRA fund USI into. So just to make your lives a bit easier when sort of instigating a rollover, and the final improvement there is the ability to filter on electronic service address as well. For this, you need to go to the global view. And it's this little drop down under the ESA column, which allows you to filter on either to identify which funds have been registered under which ESA. Okay, so now let's move on to features that we've added to both Simple Fund and Simple Invest. So this is on both products. We've added 3 new asset allocation reports. These predominantly came through from our Simple Invest clients, but we've added it to both products because hopefully even our Simple Fund clients would find some value to it. I'll demo it on Simple Fund itself. Let me clear this and search for asset allocation. So it's this pie chart here, defensive versus growth pie chart, and the actual tabular version of that form. Let's preview that. So the first one just essentially gives you a breakdown based on investment type. Second one categorizes it under defensive and growth assets and gives the breakdown, the dollar and the percentage split. And that final report essentially gives you the breakdown of essentially between defensive and growth, as well as what investment categories fall under that investment and growth segments as well, and pretty much the dollar breakdowns and the percentages along with it. So it gives you the full reconciliation for the 2 reports, or the 2 pie charts rather, that you have in the preceding 2 pages. So those are the 3 new reports that were added. And just in terms of further improvements, and this again applies to both Simple Fund and Simple Invest, Macquarie Wrap now brings through foreign investment transactions as well. So those of you that have activated a Macquarie Wrap feed, for those of you that haven't set up a feed previously, all that's done via the Connect feed management screen up here. And under Wraps and Platforms, just go into Setup, and you just look for Macquarie. And you've got Macquarie Wrap there. Fill in the details. Transactions should start coming through overnight. And as I said, it has now been extended to include foreign transactions as well. We've added 4 new corporate actions to last release as well. So these are 4 mergers for these 4 ASX codes, which took place in the month of May. Won't go through them really. And we'll keep adding to this list each sprint, or rather release, as we go through. The final one there is just with the document screen. You are now able to void documents that have been sent for digital signing. And how you do that is you're going into this report screen, or reports menu rather, document screen. You can either search for it manually, or I already know the name of it. So if you do, just type it in the search up the top. And essentially it's on the right hand, the 3 little dots, and you should now see a void option. So that you just click void, and that once voided, it will show that void sort of tag as well as that last record shows you. But that's how you would void a document that has been sent for digital signing, where it was, for example, you want to, let's say, redo the document and not have the client sign. That's how you do it. And finally, to finish off, just with Simple Invest 360, they released their trust tax return as well. So this is for the 2022 financial year. That includes the CGT schedule, losses schedule. Again, all these documents can be digitally signed as well. And as part of it, you can do amendments for both the 21 and the 22 financial years. So amendments have been activated as well. And for those of you who use Simple Invest or haven't seen it before, rather, all that's prepared similar to Simple Fund via the compliance, period compliance. And if we just jump into the tax return here, pretty much no changes in terms of 2021 to 2022, pretty straightforward in terms of the compliance side of things. Let's quickly generate it as well. It's got 30 odd pages to it, so just give it a second to load. Because I had this issue when I did test it out. It takes a second to load all those pages. There we go. And that's essentially a tax return for 2022. I'm not going to go through all these pages. Like I said, there's way more pages to the trust tax return than the SMSF return. But essentially, take my word for it, it's all ready to go as part of 2022 tax time. And like I said, fully digitally signable, all those reports and amendments can be done from 2021 onwards. Brings us to an end, essentially, to the features that were implemented as part of our June update that came out a couple of weeks back. What we are working on for the next couple of months or so is we're adding a new digital signing provider called Please Sign. So that essentially adds to our 3 existing digital signing providers, who are DocuSign, Adobe Sign, and Fuse Sign. So we'll have a fourth party coming to that space as well. We will also have an integration with Rush Gold. We will add ANZ to the smart authentication form process. For those of you that don't know what the smart authentication form is, it's essentially validate. We just added more smarts in terms of the validations that we run through as part of the bank feed authorization forms. Whereas previously we'd spend time sort of having that document go back and forth with our data services team. Whereas now we can run or we can add more smarts around validation of fields and data. So it's now just a process of adding the various banks onto that authentication process. So ANZ is the next cab off the rank, and we'll look to have that soon for you as well. And then we are going to, again, with the asset allocation reports, again, coming from majority of our Simple Invest users, which is a strategic asset allocation report, which will be added to both Simple Invest and Simple Fund. So the top 4 items will be for both products. In terms of just Simple Fund features, we need to add the 2022 audit work papers. We get our master template from Tag Financial Services, so we're waiting on them to provide us that master template, at which point we will have it enacted in the software for you. Another sort of big ticket item we're working on is pay-as-you-go summary lodgements. It's currently out on closed beta for a couple of clients. We'll see how their July lodgements go. Assuming it's all good, we will open it up to all clients sooner rather than later. We just want to make sure that it's fit for purpose before we open it up to all clients and that it works. In terms of Simply Invest 360, their next big sort of project is the shareholder screen. So that's what they are currently working on. So that's what's to be looked forward to in the next couple of months or so, and what the team is busy working on. So look, thank you so much for attending today's session. Like I said, the recording will be up there hopefully early next week. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you learned something, and till next time.